Hi everybody, welcome to Build a Quilt. I'm Diana, so glad that you're joining me for this video, the bonus block. This is the full video on the bonus block, and I say full video because I've done a bonus block video that says part 1, and I was going to put out a second video and call it part 2, and I got to thinking about it, and I thought it would be better for you all if you just had all the information I wanted to share all in one video. That way you're not looking around for a part 1 and a part 2. Sometimes that can get a little confusing. So this is the full video for the bonus block. What is it? How do you use it? What's it for? What kind of fabric do you use? All that kind of stuff. So the bonus block. A lot of you that are part of Build a Quilt know that I've been quilting for over 55 years. I know I'm old as dirt, but that's okay. Dirt's good. And my grandmother taught me how to quilt. I was her oldest granddaughter, second oldest grandchild. I had one boy cousin who was older than me, who I love dearly. He's a great guy now that we're both old as dirt together. But she taught me because I kept begging her. Every time we'd go to Grandma's house, I knew there was a closet. And when I'm talking about a closet, I mean like a little old farmhouse closet that was just like maybe 3 feet wide and went up to the ceiling, very small. If you've lived in older homes that had small closets, you know what I mean, not the big, beautiful walk-ins like we have now. And I knew that inside that closet, from the floor to the ceiling, there were quilts that Grandma had made. And back then, when she quilted and when she taught me, everything was done by hand. We did all the stitching by hand. We did all the cutting with scissors by hand. There were like a few types of things from the garment sewing world that we would use to like make curves and stuff if we were going to do quilts with curves. Like if you were doing English paper piecing, which was just called paper piecing back then, we just used like brown paper from the grocery store bags or a newspaper, anything like that. We didn't have nice little things that was all cut and pre-made for us. We'd have to cut all of those. And when I was little and we would visit, that was one of the things my grandma always, she knew I loved to cut and do stuff. So she'd always have me cut out her paper piecing pieces because my grandmother was really good at paper piecing. I'm not. I did, my very first quilt was all paper piece that I did with her, and I have never paper pieced again. I almost didn't become a quilter because of it, because I'm left-handed. All my stitches go in the opposite direction from someone who's right-handed. I'm the only lefty in my family, so it was really hard for Grandma to teach me at the beginning. And I really felt like, even though I was little, I could tell there was like tension there. And I really thought she was eventually going to give up on me, but she didn't. And I'm so thankful that she didn't, because I love quilting. I consider it an art form that we can use every day or just look at on our walls, whatever we want to do with it. And I believe that all quilters are artists in their own right. So she got tired of hearing me beg, Grandma, teach me how to quilt, teach me how to quilt. And she thought by telling me that I was going to have to learn how to make those little 1/4-inch seams and they had to be just right every single time, that was going to deter me. No, that did not deter me at all. I was willing to learn. In fact, I had already learned how to start hand stitching because I was in an organization called Pioneer Girls. It was very similar to Girl Scouts, and where you worked on badges and things like that, and that sort of thing. And so I already started learning how to sew by hand. My mother had been teaching me, and so it didn't deter me at all. And so finally, one day, she had started a Grandma's Flower Garden quilt, and I've shown you that quilt before. And she said, okay, you're going to learn, and you're going to learn on this one. You might as well learn now. And the one thing my grandma told me, and this is my tip for all of you, nothing is hard in quilting. You might have to give yourself some grace and a little patience, but there's nothing in quilting that you can't do. Now with Build a Quilt, all of that precision that you have to do by hand, all the precision you really have to do if you piece on a sewing machine is taken away because the digital pattern does that for you. Yay! So the whole idea of Build a Quilt is anyone and everyone who wants to do patchwork can do it without spending like a good year or so getting the techniques down and really learning them. Not that it's bad to learn them or maybe to do a quilt or two in a different technique, but Build a Quilt will allow you to start getting in there and quilting and making beautiful patchwork much, much, much quicker. So when I was 7, she started to teach me how to quilt. I think doing that Grandma's Flower Garden together took us several years to do, but I have it. It sits in my living room to this day. I refold it and fluff it and air it out and stuff pretty regularly. And sometimes, like in the winter, I put it away in the dark so that like smoke and stuff from the fireplace, if anything like that is in the room, I don't get that on it. I'm really careful with it. It is not my oldest quilt. I have an older quilt from my husband's great-grandmother, actually. So, which was made with wool army blankets. Just think about that, like the old scratchy ones. So, but one of the things my grandmother taught me over the years when we would go to visit her, and she and I would always sit and do a little bit of patchwork together, or she would invite and take me with her to her quilting bee circle where they met at the local church where she attended. She and the ladies would sit in the basement. They'd have a couple of big frames, so a bunch of them would sit around and do the actual finished quilting. Some would be at another table doing their piecing together. And it was their social outlet as well. And trust me, they solved the problems of the world. I don't know why we didn't listen to those women, because they knew what they were talking about. But we would always do that together. So every time I saw her, there was something new that she would teach me. And I feel like even today, even though I've created Build a Quilt and so many people love it, which thrills me, because I think it would thrill my grandmother if she was still with us, that I've taken this on, and want more people to be able to continue to do patchwork. But there was always something new to learn. I'm still learning today, and some of you inspire me, and I learn new things as well. So quilting is not something I think you ever know it all and then you just stop, no matter what techniques you're using. But the one thing she used to tell me, it actually, one of her friends told like this whole group, I remember one day, I must have been about 12 or 13. She said, whenever you make a quilt, make an extra block. And we were all like, why? And I was thinking, oh, and I thought I knew. I thought she was going to say, so you could make like a pillow to go with it, right? A little square pillow. And you could do that, right? That would be great. But that wasn't the reason. She called it the bonus block. And the bonus block was the idea that every time you make a quilt or a quilted project, you choose a block within the quilt and you make one extra. You can make it with other fabrics if you want, but the idea is to kind of use up any of the fabric you still have from that project. Even if the colors aren't exactly in the same place they were in the finished piece that you made, you're using that fabric. So you're being more efficient with your fabric. You're not ending up with tons of smaller scraps, things like that. And so she said, pick one block, make it, and set it aside. She said, by the end of the year or year and a half or 2 years or whatever, whenever you think about those blocks again, you'll go back and you'll have at least one full bed quilt probably that you can make, depending on the size of your blocks. Now, back when I used to quilt with them, full-size blocks were only about 6 to 7 inches. So they were pretty small. You had to make a lot of those if you wanted to make a full bed size quilt. But today we have so many different sizes, from the smaller ones to the big jumbo ones, that with those jumbo ones, you could, like, if you made a few projects, you could end up with a nice size throw quilt, if not a small bed quilt, pretty quickly. So that was her tip for all of us, was to make an extra block, make a bonus block, whatever block you thought you loved the best from the quilt that you had just made. And so if it was a star block or a flower block or a picture block that had some hand applique on it, whatever it was, just make an extra and put it to the side and start building that pile. Now, I quilt a lot, right? Because I have the Build A Quilt channel and Build A Quilt, and I'm always trying to come up with new ideas for blocks, which is the one thing nice about Build A Quilt too, is because you can take the segment pieces and put them together kind of like a jigsaw puzzle and come up with blocks that you've probably never seen before, or you can do all the classic blocks that you've seen and love. So because everything comes together with those smaller segment pieces. So the idea of the bonus block is to make one block for every of the project for every project you make in the year. So here at Build A Quilt this year, we've made 2 very simple quilts so far. We've done the simplest, the easiest quilt ever, which was just made from squares. Hang on just one second. Let me grab mine. Hang on. Actually, this is not the whole quilt. This is one of the big jumbo blocks. But this was a study in colors for us, just letting colors from nature choose things. So each 4-patch was from a color card by Sarah Renee Clark that we would pick. In fact, you all picked them at random. So that was a 4-patch. That was one of our 4 patches. And you would just pick fabrics, 4 of the colors from the card, pick whatever fabrics you had and make a 4-patch. And then we filled in with white squares as sashing. And in the center, you could either do a fussy cut block or pick a fabric that you had enough of to make the center of the jumbo block the same. Okay, so this is one big jumbo piece left over, or my extra. And now I'm actually getting ready to do a little series on how I'm going to end up using this quilt in this block as a gift for someone very special. So that will be coming. That's probably going to end up being one of our members only video series. So if you want, click that join button at the top of our channel page and choose our Build a Quilter level, which is I think $5.99 a month. And one of the benefits of that level is that you will get members only videos that are only available for members of the thing. And that's going to be coming. So that was one that we did. We did another one called Reflections in Flight that was all about flying geese units, large flying geese units, or you could choose smaller flying geese units. You had a chance to choose sizes because we used the Build a Quilt basic segment series, the combo series. 6 of our most often used segments in quilting. Each one of them came in either 3 or 4 sizes. So you could make your blocks whatever size you want. And when we did Reflections in Flight, everybody who had this set, I sent them a bonus pattern for a 5x10 flying geese unit. And that way we were able to make a big quilt with bigger flying geese units. So lots of fun. And a lot of the things I'm going to show you are things you can make with this or blocks that we've made with other patterns. But the idea is just to take one block, just choose the one you love the most. Sometimes when I do a quilt, there is one particular block that I love. I love making it. I love putting the colors together for it. That's always my bonus block. Or if you wanted, you could choose the block that was the hardest for you to make. That way, in the end, you're going to have a quilt and you say, these are the hardest blocks I've ever made, but look at what a beautiful quilt I've created. So that's always a thought too. So you can use blocks like these. These are, this is an 8x8, I believe. This was an 8x8. So you could choose things like that for your bonus blocks. I have a ton because last year we really worked on 10 by 10 blocks because of the Riley Blake Block Challenge. We took all those patterns, I turned them into Build a Quilt patterns for you, and that whole set is still available for free over at the website. So you get 16 block patterns in there, plus sashing and all the instructions. The videos are here on the channel. So if you want to get started on something like that, you could make the Riley Blake block challenge. You could choose blocks within it as your bonus blocks and put your own quilt together, whatever you like. And then some of these are just blocks that we did within the year. So this was one, but these are all 10 by 10. Here's our 10 by 10 flower basket block. Here's one that was part of a Christmas pattern set that we did. I loved this one, how it turned out, and I loved this fabric. All these fabrics were just scrap fabric that I had. I loved this one because it's so multi-dimensional and so textural because of the little star within the bigger star within the diamond in a square. I thought that one was great. And here is another one just like that. In fact, these were from the same series, but you notice the centers are different, which makes the blocks look completely different. And this was another one that had a snowball block in the center. So lots of things you could do with those. And then I think this is another 8-inch block. Am I right there? Oh, I think it's a 9-inch block. That was one from a project we did. Then we had this one and a couple more. That's a 9-inch, a friendship star. That's a great bonus block. And this one we just recently did an inset pinwheel. That's a 10-inch one too. In fact, I'm going to set that one to the side. But any blocks you have, you just choose them. And now I have some bigger blocks over here as well. But the next part that I want to share with you is how you go about using them to put together a quilt once you have enough. Now, if you have something like 16 by 16 blocks. These are 4 pinwheel blocks that were put together to make one 16 by 16 block in a quilt that I had made. So the nice thing about this block is I can use my Build a Quilt segment piece and use my 4-inch half square triangles to make an 8-inch pinwheel block. Okay, or I could make the whole block. But if I just wanted to use the 8-inch pinwheel block, I could use that 8-inch block with, say I had blocks that were 16 inches like this one. I could use a different 8-inch block between them, smaller ones, to kind of add a different look to it. So the simplest way to do a bonus quilt excuse me, is by taking blocks that are the exact same size and just laying them out and sewing them together. No sashing, no borders, sewing them together, doing your finished quilting, doing your binding, boom, you're done. And even with these 10-inch blocks, you can get a pretty good sized throw by doing, let's see, by doing like 35 of them, you'd have a really nice size block. So maybe in your projects, you're seeing like 2 blocks you really love, do them both as a bonus block. There's no problem with that at all. Or let's say you could take, let me get some of these that are really different here. Let's kind of pin them up here. There's one. And here's 2. So that's 20 inches across now. That's a nice little size wall hanging or a table mat, right? And then another one here and another one over here. And you would have a nice size mat. So if you just had 4 10 by 10 bonus blocks, you could make a really nice piece for a table and to put over the back of a chair or your sofa, like on the headrest type area, or a nice little one to do for the wall. Now you could, if you wanted with these bonus blocks, I said originally, when you do your bonus block, try to use up the fabric that you have. And that's true. That's what I typically do. However, you would have all these blocks at hand with just a little planning, like maybe you want to do them for Christmas or Easter or something that has a more red, white, and blue for the patriotic holidays here in the US. Choose those fabrics specifically then, and then make your bonus blocks in those fabrics, and then they'll all blend together at the end for if you want something really quite specific. But like I said, I typically just do mine in whatever fabric I have left over. Bing, bang, boom, and I'm done. I throw these quilts together. What are bonus quilts good for? Well, kids, preteens, even teens, even college students love them. Why? They're scrappy, and scrappy means tons of color, lots of different designs, and little children love to look and pick things out. It's a nice way to like teach them their colors. It's a nice way even maybe to teach them how to count. You could say, how many green squares do you see in this block? Something like that. So scrappy quilts are really great for that. They're great for a college student to put on their bed because truly it's not something you've spent a huge amount of time and effort on. So if it gets a little messed up while they're in college, which is likely to, that's all right. It's fine. You made it for them to love and use and take care of them when they're all wrapped up in it. So that's perfectly fine. So that's the easiest way to make a bonus quilt with your bonus blocks. Let me set that one aside. And if you have, I have some other bonus blocks here that were for some project. This was from a small wall or a pretty large wall hanging that we did last year. This is a 15 by 15 block. That's one of the 5440 or flight blocks. This is our St. George's Cross block. I loved this block and the colors and all. And so when I made my bonus, I made it exactly the way I had made it for my design in my quilt because I loved how it turned out so much. And I still had this fabric left over. There's this block. And then this was 2 years ago. This block was part of our year-end quilt along piece. So the only thing they have in common is they're all 15 by 15 inches. So if I put two of them together, that's 30 inches. 3 of them is 45, and 4 of them across is 60 inches. That's plenty of width for a throw. And then fill in about 5 or 6 rows down with this size block, and you're going to have a great quilt for a really good size throw. Even that quilt would even be big enough to go like on a smaller child's bed. And so these come together the quickest with your bonus quilts because they're large and they go together quicker. You need less of them. However, at 15 by 15 inches, what if I have blocks that are different sizes? I hear some of you saying, I don't do all my blocks in the same size, and most of us don't. So that's, if you're thinking that, that's great. So let's say you are going to work with, you have some 15 by 15 inch blocks like this one. Let me set these across. So 15 by 15. If I had 10-inch blocks, let's see if I can work this out so you can see it up here. It's a little hard to twist and get this in the right place for you to see, but I think it's easier than me holding it up. So let's say you had some 10 inches and some 15-inch blocks. Let me just put one more magnet there. There we go. So we can see that this 10-inch block takes up 2/3 of the 15-inch block. So what do we need up here? We need 2 5-inch blocks. Well, guess what? Each one of these segments is a 5-inch segment, so you could play with that. But remember that Riley Blake set I told you about? I pulled these two. These were bonuses. In fact, I've been making some of these again because I'm trying to make a really wide bed quilt, not a bed quilt, but a bed runner for the bottom of a bed. And so in this one, this was one of their designs. These are 5x5 8-point stars. Now, if I wanted, I could put something different here in the middle from my Build a Quilt set. If I wanted, I could create a different center, but these work great because you could put 2 of them right there. And then you have star, star, and 2 stars. Let's fold this over so you don't see the 2 on top. So there, that would give you a 25-inch segments all the way across. So the next time I use a 15-inch block, what I might do is move a 10-inch block up to the top and put 2 small blocks down at the bottom. But what I'm trying to explain is that with a 15-inch block, anything that's divisible by 5, basically, because 3 times 5 is 15, you can work that out with your other blocks to fill in around your larger blocks. So your 10-inch blocks work with it, your 5-inch blocks work with it. Even, let's see, yeah, 5-inch blocks would work the best and the easiest. So if you have lots of different sizes, you have 5-inch sizes and you have 10-inch sizes and 15-inch sizes, you should be able to work those together into a rectangle or a square for a quilt, right? And so the other part of that I wanted you to figure out in your mind is when you see a block, this was a block, this 4 patch of 8-point stars was a block in that Riley Blake series that we did. And so when I look at this, I say, oh, holy moly, I've got 4 8-point stars right there that are 5 inches. Well, I can use those. So let's say I'm not using this, but I'm just using this. Let's move this over. I could put this in as a 10-inch block because it is one with my other 10-inch blocks. Or in that Riley Blake series, since they're all 10-inch blocks, I could put in some of the other ones with my other 10-inch blocks too. You'll have 16 10-inch blocks just with that Riley Blake set, which is completely free over at our website. So when you're trying to work with other sizes, try to figure out, it's easy math, but I'm going to use a term nobody likes to hear, the least common denominator. Okay. So what if you had this 16-inch block that I showed you before? Well, 8-inch blocks. So this is a 10-inch. Not going to be able to use that one, but I have some 8-inch blocks. Let's see. Here we go. These are the 8-inchers, I believe. Yeah. So I could take that 8-inch block of the pinwheel and put it between my other 8-inch blocks. That's an 8-inch block. Or I could, if I had the 16-inch blocks, I could use one of these at the top and one of these at the bottom if I had several 8-inch blocks, and turn those into the rest of the design and mix and match those. But you can go even smaller. You could go down to 2-inch blocks because 2 will go into 16. So that's really the smallest block you can use. But I would say probably go down and maybe try to use 4-inch blocks. Maybe use 4-inch blocks between 16-inch blocks as your sashing for that particular bonus quilt. So anything that's evenly divisible by the size of the biggest block, you can use. And look into your blocks that you want to use and see what you have. So let's look at this one. So this is an 8-point star. And inside, here's a pinwheel, but it's a pinwheel that is a diamond in a square. And I believe, let me grab my ruler. 1, 2, 3. Yep. This is a 4-inch diamond in a square. And you have that pattern in the combo set. But instead, with this block, we made a pinwheel out of, now this one, we did not use half square triangles, but you could, to make that little piece. So that would give you a 4-inch block that you could use as smaller pieces around a 16-inch block or an 8-inch block. So 4, 8, 16, all of those could be worked in together for your final bonus quilt. You don't have to wait until you have enough of one size block to make your bonus quilt, although you can. And those turn out to be beautiful quilts. In fact, I love them the most, and they're the easiest to do. But if I'm in a pickle and I want to put a quilt together, I go to my bonus block stack, and I don't wait till I just have a few and then make a quilt and then stack up again. I like have huge stacks of bonus blocks. So when I decide I want to make a scrappy quilt for someone, or maybe even just for us, for our living room, where we're watching TV at night, eating some popcorn, drinking some hot chocolate in the winter, whatever that is, I have a ton of blocks to look from, to look through and try to put something together. And if it's kind of a crummy day and my brain just isn't like, I can't think about designing anything really brand new at the moment. I'm having a little bit of a brain freeze. I don't have my mojo in there, my sojo, I think someone said. Then I pull out my bonus blocks and I go to my living room floor, which is nice and wide, and I just start throwing them out and putting them together, just kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. And sometimes I don't end up sewing them together. It's just something that helps inspire me or get me out of that funk I might be in. Or if I do need to make a quilt, I'll do that and I'll have them, I'll go sew them together, and then I'll do the finished quilting, bind them, and boom, I'm done with it. And a quilt like that, because you've been making your blocks over time, a lot of times you can finish those in just a couple of days. You can throw your blocks together and get the top sewn together, which is all your blocks, usually on the first day, and you can usually do the finished quilting in a day or two the next day, depending on how elaborate you want your finished quilting to be. Now, here's my next tip for you in regard to finished quilting with bonus blocks to make your bonus quilt. I stick only with the basic meandering stipple. I feel like if I try to use other patterns, the other designs either get lost or in the way of all the different designs within that quilt. And the idea with the bonus quilt too is if you do it at the end of every year or the beginning of the new year from all the stuff you had left over from the year before, it's kind of like an encyclopedia of what you did in 2025 or 2019 or whatever year you put those blocks together. It's kind of an encyclopedia of that year if you only used those blocks. But because I have so many, I might be having blocks from 2010 and 2018 and 2022 all in one quilt. But doing them kind of as that encyclopedia of what you've done that year, that can be really fun. And I highly recommend, if you do them that way specifically, keep those quilts for yourself, because probably you've given away a lot of the full quilts or quilted projects that were part of those bonus blocks originally. So keep that quilt, that bonus quilt, for yourself so that you can always look back and go, oh, I remember when I made that. That was in so-and-so's quilt. Oh, I remember when I got that fabric. The memory idea is part of the history of your quilt and of quilting over time. And really, it's the only way that we really track our history with quilting is verbally at this point. Verbal stories to remember is a great way to do that. So if you're going to do one yearly from just your blocks that year, kind of keep those for yourself. Those are going to be kind of special to you as time goes on. Okay. And I will tell you that one year I made a bonus quilt for myself like that. And then I made like a couple of others just mixing and matching because I end up with so many blocks. So if you want, just take some time and let your blocks add up and then start making them, or however you want. because remember, you're the quilter, you're the artist, and however you put these bonus quilts together is entirely up to you. So another thing I wanted to share real quickly is when you're breaking things down. So let's look at, this was a block that we did in that Riley Blake challenge as well. You've got a 4x4 diamond in a square. Now that's actually a pattern in your Build a Quilt basic combo set. But you have these little rectangular type segments that are made out of 3 different flying geese units. So these were all the same color. If you made those going up and down between larger blocks would be a great sashing or border for a quilt if you wanted to do that. This is a 6x6 block. And so if you had a 12-inch block, you could use these between them if you didn't have enough 12x12s. So look, that's the one nice thing about Build a Quilt, is because everything is segmented like that. It's really easy to break them down into your smaller block pieces. So that is the story and the idea behind a bonus block quilt. No matter your quilt or your project, just take one block that you love and make one more block and set it aside. When you have enough or you want to play with them, pull them out and do so. If you are getting to where you have bigger and smaller blocks, remember, just take your largest block, figure out the lowest common denominator, and that's how small of a segment piece you can use within that block. So like we said with this one, this 16-inch block, you can use 8-inch blocks, you can use 4-inch blocks, you could use 2-inch blocks too. And I'm not telling you not to, but at that point, you're starting to make a lot of extra blocks. So if you're going to do sashing and things like that, you'll have to figure those out and do those. The simplest way to do that bonus quilt is just to take them and start sewing them together. I apologize for that. And start sewing them together and making yourself that beautiful quilt. It may be a throw, it might end up being a wall size, it might end up being a bed quilt, whatever you want it to be. Okay, folks. So earlier I shared with you that we made a bunch of these 4 patches when we used the Sarah Renee Clark color cubes. There are 2 of those color cubes that look like this. And this is what we did. I showed you pictures and all, you guys voted. She gives you a picture here, the colors that are in it, and all the colors and their shades, light, medium, and dark on the back. So we were able, when we made our blocks in that particular quilt, to choose, did you want to use the lights, the mediums, the darks? It was entirely up to each person to use what they want. But I tell you that because if you're interested, this is a link to these blocks. I do have, this is my only link that I have, the only affiliate link I use. Sarah Renee Clark did not make these for quilters, but I picked them up for myself several years ago now, and I love them. I think every quilter should have them because if you, like so many quilters, have a hard time picking fabrics to go together, which I think you can all do, but if you have a hard time or you get in a rut, so see this block, those are my colors. I would make every quilt in my life those colors, but I know that's kind of silly because I love all colors. So I try to not do that so I don't get into a bad habit of having everything look the same. So even I go through my Sarah Renee Clark color cubes and I grab those to help inspire myself, or I let nature inspire me. I take a walk out through the garden or over at the park or something like that. But that is there, and that will be down in the description if you want to go take a look at it. And if you purchase it, I do get a little bit back from that affiliate link. So thank you so much in advance. I appreciate your support that way. And I know Sarah does too. She's put out great products. She's more of a graphic designer. Didn't know that she was making something that works perfectly for quilters, but I think she did. All right, everybody. So I told you earlier that you can find our Build a Quilt basic combo set. Whoa, almost knocked my thing off. over at our website. It is completely downloadable, everybody. I printed mine out and put it in a small binder just so I can flip through and have my, got other stuff in here too, because I always end up just sticking things in here. But you get your cut sheets, you get all of the information. And with this, you get how-to video to make each and every segment. So if you're new to Build a Quilt, technique is super simple, but you get all the how-to videos on making the segments. So you'll know how to do that and you'll be a pro in no time. But that or all of our other patterns, the free Riley Blake set from last year is still available. They're all at the website, mybuildaquilt.com. And again, I thank you in advance if you purchase any of our patterns or if you try any of our free patterns. I hope you enjoy them. If you have questions once you're using them, you can always put your questions here. And I love that when you do that. But if you have a question you want to ask me privately, just email me at support@sewuncommon.com and I'll get back with you as quick as I can, typically the same day, unless it's the weekend, if we're gone out of town or something. And I usually put information out to say, I'm not around this weekend, guys. I won't get back to emails until Monday or something. But I try to get back with you as soon as I can on that same day. I don't like to keep you waiting because I don't like to wait when I ask questions either. So you can get a hold of me at support@sewuncommon.com. All right, everybody. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining me for this video on the bonus block and the bonus quilt. I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video with your friends and your family members who might be quilters or who might be interested in quilting, because Build a Quilt is made for people of any level to be able to sit down right from the beginning and start doing patchwork with all that intensity of precision built into your home embroidery pattern. You only need a 5x7 hoop and you only need some wash away stabilizer and thread to do that. Alrighty. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining again today. Remember what I said at the beginning, that quilters are artists? We are artists in our own right. And together we all quilt life beautiful. I'll see you all next time.